very special guest today, the wonderful Keith Harker. Keith,
Hello, everybody.
thank you so much for being on the show. Keith is a vocal coach for a very long time and also works with bands including Munyon, Mo, in the merch realm. You could find him on tour all around the country. I've been waiting to have him on the show for a while. Keith, thank you so much for being a part of the program.
Happy to be here, Steiner, man. How you doing?
Doing good.
A friend of mine was tour manager and photographer for a metal tour not too long ago. And if that merch person didn't slam the first two shows, I think they did like, I don't know, $28,000 in merch sales like the first two shows in total, not one day. But like that was a number that was supposed to be predicted to be like $6,000. So when you end
So
up
you say 28?
Oh yeah. So when you end up having a poignant merch person that can hold down the fort and bring in the money, all of a sudden now you have a whole freaking bank account that has flexible funds in it. Like about half of that goes back into the reinvestment for the inventory, which means you're still sitting pretty at like $14,000 that you can use however the hell you need to make that tour float. So
Right.
if the first two shows you didn't have a specific lighting designer and you had, house guys do it, now you can afford to bring whoever the fuck you want on the road.
Yeah.
And like on top of that, if you want an army of photographers and videographers to make a reproduction or media for that event, boom, that helps your production value. That might be able to help you sell more tickets in the future. But it really just comes down to the fact that you need the money to pay the people to do it. And sometimes the door fee that you get when you play shows in certain places just doesn't cover
cut it.
Yeah, and I know I haven't been saying much, but circling back on it, but you don't need much when it comes to merch. You just need to have enough items to make people sit and puzzle for a moment or two. And if you have, this is free advice to everybody. This is just me helping. If you have an item that people will buy regardless, then you're already winning. Here's my hint to any band that will listen. Have freaking koozies and have freaking lighters. You have those two items, you will walk out with like $400 a day for literally no reason.
Dude, koozies and lighters are so important. There's koozies, lighters, stickers.
My fiance has 2 drawers of koozies. So I know there are other people that collect koozies
I've got
at similar
tons.
degrees.
I get a koozie at every show I go to. I mean, I love magnets. I love stickers. I love pins. There's a reason. So we actually just got, at the time of filming this, our very first ever Secondhand Talent merch has landed.
Heck yeah.
See if I've got one. Oh, here we go. Check it out.
Nice. I need to start looking into that for my darn self. Oh, that's such a cool patch, dude. Patches are dank.
Right?
Nice.
So we just did we did a super small run. Shout out to Laurel from Bayleaf Studios for putting those together. We just have, I think we numbered and signed them all. We have 10 with a purple border, 5 with a white border, and 5 with a black border. And we've got Mife Designs making some pins for us.
Nice.
And those are items that are usable. It's like similar to a koozie or similar to a magnet. It's something like a pin, you have it on, and that's also free advertising.
Right. And that's so something that I actually just had a conversation with somebody not too long ago. And that was what I really brought up is like a big important fact about merch is like in the grand scheme of things, and at the end of the day, if it's between getting your merchandise out there and netting like a hand over fist profit, your merch should always just get out there. Like,
yes,
a suggestion to a lot of bands that I have is have an item that you can give people to sweeten the pot whenever they're being assholes.
Yes.
Because I can't tell you how many people will come up and be like, $25 to $30 for a t-shirt. And I'm like, yeah, you've gone to Kohl's before. You know that t-shirts are $20 to $30. Like, it's not.
You're wearing a box logo Supreme like t-shirt, right. like what are we?
And God forbid this was the Affliction t-shirt era, whenever them suckers were like $120 a pop.
Yeah.
And people wearing them will come up to you with their rhinestone blue jeans on and start freaking out about how much your hoodies are. And I'm just like, I don't know what to say. we had a North Face merch item for one of the bands that I've worked for recently, and I love them. I think that they're great. And the best part is if you know anything about North Face, the price that we're charging is like nothing. So whenever people come to the table, they'll be like, $125 for a North Face. I'm like, bro, have you ever,
bro, like really,
have you ever North
seriously,
Faced before? Because $125 and you get the band logo on it. Like you're basically just buying a North Face anyway. You're not even spending money for the embroidery
and no tax. Like
exactly,
I mean, like,
and no tax, and it goes to support your band. Like, oh my god, the worst thing in the world.
So many pluses.
Yeah,
and here's the thing, another, a distinction about merch, based on kind of jumping off of what you were just saying. It is different for, we sometimes refer to bands, especially in the jam scene, into being what?
The tiers. Yeah.
The tiers.
Yeah.
And we were in the jam scene. We refer to it a lot: first tier, second tier, third tier, right? Like, I'm a 9th tier jam band. Why isn't my show sold out?
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, when you're going to a Fish show, right?
Right.
Whether or not you buy that poster is not necessarily going to affect the bottom line. But when you're going to see Kitchen Dwellers or Munyon or Sacred Hollow or bands that are not in that, a stadium sellout tier, it really does make a huge difference, not just in the financial bottom line, but these bands care about their fans. They care about their fan base, and to know that their fans want to represent what they do in their daily lives.
Right.
It's a good feeling.
I think that's a brilliant, actually, I'm just going to shout out another Facebook group, the Dish Pit Kitchen Dwellers. Of all like the fan groups on Facebook, and it's I'm kind of lurking in a fair number of them, but one of my favorite ones is the Dish Pit, because man, like I've seen straight up people just ask for personal help there, and like people come out of nowhere and just be like, yeah man, like I'll give you a call just to talk to you. And like that's the type of community that, when people, weirdly enough, I get a lot of people asking me like advice for bands, and I'm like, I'm just a merch guy and a voice teacher. But at the same time, like the big advice that I can give people is to create that community behind you. So, I mean, and that's really what it comes down to in the grand scheme of things, is when you build a good community behind you, you basically can have a guarantee at places. When you're cracking into new new ventures, new avenues, new markets. Thankfully, the Kitchen Dwellers have been doing, East Coast crap, and as a Montana band, that's like huge. But the fact that they have like a surrogate home in Western Pennsylvania now, like that's massive. Are they capable of playing to rooms of 10,000 plus people? Absolutely. But that's like a once every 4 months thing whenever Billy Strings decides to be super badass and let anybody play with him on stage,
Right.
Instead of him sitting in with everyone else, because that seems to be the new theme right now. Hashtag shout out Billy, congratulations on your marriage. Yeah. But all those things that kind of go along with it is just, you build something around the overall meaning of the band, and the Kitchen Dwellers have never been shy about how they feel about, folks that suffer through addiction or people that just need that community. And that's something that the Dish Pit, as far as like fans and representation is concerned, is actually like properly represented. Like
that's actually how I Torin and I, when we met, that's how we bonded, was through talking through the music of Wise River.
Yeah, and it's a brutal album if you listen
closely. I've lost quite a number of people this year. And that album,
I know what you mean, man. Like
it helps.
I mean, it really does.
And it's the strangest thing, but like, you get through to the end, and into Their Names Are the Trees.
Yep.
And you're just like,
oof.
This catharsis that comes through it. It's similar almost into the way to the catharsis I felt when I saw Ghost of the Forest.
Right. That was also a very brilliant performance, by the
It
way.
just
I
it's an
appreciated that.
the album is an experience, and having, being fortunate enough to know the guys, to the limited extent that I do, like, it really makes sense to me that their fan base is like that.
Right. And I mean, you hear that stuff all the time, like with Low Fam. Lotus has a really fun, group as well. And yeah, I do see positivity within it. And that's not to say that there are groups that are better or not, but it just really is. It's part of why we like what we like about the music scene. Half of us were weird black sheep in our groups of people growing up in some capacity, and we were always just looking for acceptance. That's kind of what we do as humans. And when you allow yourself to be part of a society, whatever that might look like, and in this case, let's just say the dish pit of the kitchen dwellers, then
Sure.
you do start to embody the overall belief systems, more or less, of that quote unquote governing body, like the music of the kitchen dwellers. Like, not to say that it's a gospel, so to
No, it's
speak,
an
but
ethos, more
yeah,
so, I would say. It's
and
just
you
kind of like,
resonate with it, and it's
exactly. And, it's also, what's magical to me about it, anything music in general, but since we're on the topic of KD, keep talking about that,
yeah,
but it's the way that they, it's so, it, it resonates so well with just life.
yeah,
Like, it's so specific but non-specific
right.
at the
What
same time, where it's like, I don't need to know exactly why this song was written the way it was, but I
right.
feel in my heart.
The line that made me feel like that the most, weirdly enough, is I can't remember. It talks about tire tracks burning up the back of the mountain, and it's funny because I hear that and, like, yeah, I'm from Western Pennsylvania, but I'm not from like the middle of nowhere where
Mm,
you can like just drive a fucking truck up somebody's mountain and just tear it up, without much consequence at all. Sure,
right.
there's ATVs and dirt bikes and crap, but like,
Sure.
you can't do that. So there is a total disconnect with a lot of their imagery, but at the same time, there's enough of a comparison and parallel that no matter what version of that you experience personally, it still hits real hard. And one of my favorite random facts about uh, the Kitchen Dwellers is everybody in that band writes music for it.
Mm,
And weirdly enough, one of the
mm.
only non-singers, correction, the only non-singer. So Sean doesn't sing too many featured songs. He'll sing in like group things, but he won't necessarily sing like hardcore harmonies or like have a feature too much. But he writes, man, like the songs that he writes are the things that like always seem to catch me on images. And shout out to Joe Funk, because Joe writes most of like the nautically themed things, it seems. And man, like those two guys and their songs, like I love every song Kitchen Dwellers has, but I always find myself kind of really connecting with the emotional journey that Sean or Joe will take me on in that regard. And that's also something I give a lot of credit to them as a band as a whole, is they are all very individual people, but they do such a good job at working through a unit concept
Mm.
that, and they know each other's roles whenever everybody else is featured. Like if Torrin's featured, Joe and Max know exactly what they need to do to fill in.
Right. They know their own roles too. That's the
Exactly.
other.
And then
Yep.
God forbid, in most bands, Torrin would be the only feature. That's not the case with the Kitchen Dwellers. Everybody gets featured more or less that is a featured voice,
Yeah.
shout out Sean, who's not. But like when Torrin's not up front, he knows what he needs to do. When, and that's what creates the level up aspect for me as the voice coach observer, is when they don't have to think about things and they can be as fluid and as articulate in their set list design as they have traditionally always been, at least in my experience since working with them too, it's really humbling. Like I get inspiration from watching them do stuff that I apply to everybody else. Shout out to Daniel Donato. I've been doing some work with him in recent history, and he's probably one of the only bands other than the Kitchen Dwellers where like at the end of one of the first or second sessions, like I've been like, oh my God, I am out of stuff to teach. Like we've gone through a lot of information very quickly. And his outfit is incredibly skilled, and I really give him credit because they lean into the deeper aspects of vocal work that traditionally stays outside of the jam scene. So, if we just want to like full circle things and kind of get away from the merch stuff for a moment, like the voice stuff there's so much potential of it in the jam scene. And it's simply because everybody is a consummate professional musician. Like everybody knows what sounds good. They know what notes are supposed to do what in chords and things like that. Why not add complexity to it? Because that's generally why you have a 45 pedal board anyways. Complexity and depth of sound. Might as well add a whole different thing to it when it comes down to vocals. Big shout out to the work that's been done by the Munyon boys too.
Yes, absolutely.
Justin and Joe have been, such good friends of mine for over the years, and with the addition of Grant and getting him a little bit more experience singing, and
Johnny,
their new drummer Johnny they lucked out finding him. They lucked out.
Sings the harmonies are coming back, and I've been telling them like, guys, you
have the Banana Man, dude.
Like you have the opportunity now to play songs that you haven't played in years.
Yeah, like the fact that I might see a Banana Man in like the next year.
Yes,
like
fucking Banana Man.
It's like the only thing I'm so glad that they did that at the end of that New Year's show, because at least I saw it once. I knew it existed. I never saw it live, but
I have been begging them.
Yeah, same.
The last time I saw Banana Man performed, I think, was the New Year's run in 2019.
That was the last one.
Yeah. And that has been
that's your holy grail.
Man, as long as you're gold, you can put him into that. It's just my one. It like it's in kind of the way like you would say like Birdwatcher or something like that would be quintessentially fishy.
Right.
To me, Banana Man is the mungiest Munyon.
Oh yes.
That and like Sloob, and like
Sloob is good. I would love to hear Scrambled Legs live, but I know that's like a borderline impossibility.
How about Return to Sender?
Yo, yeah. I mean, that's so.
So I
Real Talk Munyon's my favorite band. Anytime anybody asks me, I'm just like, these guys. And it's not to say that I don't know many other fantastic people, but I just feel like when I close my eyes and I listen to music, and I not only see people in their real form shine through their music, like Munyon's it. Because if you ever meet Justin, you're just like, yeah, dude, you're definitely jazz, but you're like the clowniest version of jazz there is. And then you meet Joe, and then you're like, as if the first guy wasn't clowny jazz enough.
Yeah,
there's Joe.
I've been blessed to know Joe for like 15 years. I've known Justin for a really long time as well, and yeah, and that's similar to KD. They're just they're great people. They're down to earth, and one of the things I love the most about watching them play music is that knowledge of knowing their roles and knowing how to
right. They know what their mission statement is, and they're able to stick with it and be consistent. Like I feel like that's something that bands just struggle with in general. I mean, hell, like all of us struggle with that as people. Like looking at us as, who are we? What is our point? What's our thing? What's our personal mission statement? And how can we adhere to that? And that's where I think a lot of the success versus failure in the music industry comes from, is this like flippancy where you think that like, oh, well, this was my happy album, let's release a sad album next. Or like, stuff as weird and superficial as that can even creep into people's minds and alter their creativity. But, in my mind, all that really comes down to is just like, do you believe in it? And do you want that to be the case? Like if you do enough, then you're going to have a community, and that community will form around that idea. Like, I'll give a shout out to one of my favorite local bands here, Broctopus from Pittsburgh. They're just the best group of dudes out there, and like, a lot of just their personalities have affected how I've interpreted how I should do merch on the road, and like they're just a local Pittsburgh band. Like that's not to say that they're not a successful Pittsburgh band, but at the same time, like, you know, they're not selling $5,000 worth of merch in a day. They're not doing this, that, or the other. So like, really, what when I say this to people, people are like, well, what did you take away from them or learn from them? And really, it just comes down to the fact that like music is meant for the community. And like every member of that band, the moment that they're done, they're going to go off the stage and they're going to shake the hands and they're going to talk to every single person in the audience that like wants to talk to them about stuff. That's the same thing about Stick Out Hollow. I'll give them a lot of credit too. They're real
Yes.
freaking friendly dudes.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Real
and
100% genuine.
and that's exactly what the secret is to being able to not only get out of your hometown if that's your objective, but to create a comfortable existence as a band so it doesn't become a leech on your overall livelihood or your investment, like,
or on your mental health.
yeah, well, most importantly your mental health.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I mean, people, you know, that's, you know, that struggle is real, maintaining that composure on the road, and, you know, working things out as a group, you know.
yeah,
You mentioned, you know, they worked so cohesively, but they're all still individuals.
yeah, and
And
trust me, everybody gets pissed off when you only get 3 hours of sleep a night for like 3.5 weeks. But that's like, you know, this is me as a production person's plea out to management. Please God, route it so whenever we're out of a venue at 3 o'clock in the morning, don't make me have to drive 9 hours before I can have 2 hours of sleep in a hotel before they kick me out at 11, where I have to drive 4 more hours to the next, you know,
right.
venue.
Yeah, I
Like
remember those days.
it's just one of those situations where like, you know, if very, and this is, you know, one of my observations as a voice health person on tour as well, is like the quality of life stuff is really the difference. And that's where the community really does come out to help a lot of the times. You know, that's why people like me have a merch existence, because like if the band can show up and not have to worry about merch and they just kick all the boxes towards this folding table and they can to worry about the music, but they can trust the money to go to the right place and they can trust, you know, the things to be beneficial.
Huge.
And like you, oh my God, like you might as well have cooked
It's a
them
game
a
changer.
Thanksgiving dinner and brought it to them and fed it to them.
Yeah.
And cut up the food person, you know,
Peace of
piecemeal.
mind is worth more than anything money can buy.
Especially in the music world, because
Yes.
you have 45 minutes of free time, even though you're at the venue for 7 hours. You know, especially if you're a band without a production crew, because you're doing it all. You have to set up, you have to tear down. If you're an opening band, you have to set up and tear down twice that day, because the
Fast.
yeah, the headlining band has to sound check too, and they only give you like 5 minutes when you're done with yours to be ready for your next one. And you know, it's just these weird little small facts that anytime I do one of these podcast interviews, I always end up dropping one or two like little bits of reality for the fans that go to see shows. Like, you got to be aware that when that band goes up to play that 3 hour set at the end of the day, they've already been doing shit for like 11 hours, whether or not that's like, you know, eating food or taking a nap. Like, those are rare occasions where you get to do so in a scenario that is actually conducive to relaxing. Most of the time it's just like the van rolls in, you have a meal, so you have to eat, then you immediately, when you're done with that, you have sound check. When you're immediately done with that, you either have, you know, dinner or something else. Like, God forbid your merch guy walks up with 75 fucking posters for you to sign, and you have like, you know, 20 minutes before doors and all 5 members of the band need to sign it and stuff like that. Like, it can be chaotic and stressful, and that's still, those are weird little small elements that just take your head out of the game. So there's a lot to appreciate behind the scenes and just with the daily existence of being a musician in that scene that makes your concert happen. Like, it's and it's a lot.
Tying it all back into what we said at the very beginning, you know, one of the reasons I think that this platform is so important is that, you know, the casual fan that goes to a show goes for the spectacle, which, you know, they paid for the ticket. They're going to a show, right? But there's not even really a consideration for everybody else. And the, you know, having been, you know, a performer for 17 years, but having also been a festival producer, event manager, production assistant, road manager, stagehand, merch develop, you know, I've done everything. And the amount of stories, you know, like yours, the amount of like relatable experiences, the deeper understanding of what happens, outside of just a concert, that it's not just a 3-hour workday. Like, getting these stories out there to me is so important, because it does go towards building that community of not necessarily just one fan base, but across, music fans in general. Like, giving people a window into the insight, a window into, kind of what the day to day is like, and what how hard these professionals actually work to, for no recognition. Their name is not on the marquee. We all know that the band gives kudos,
Right.
when credit where credit is due, but I have felt that we really need a space where, you know those people who work so hard for our benefit, as attendees to this concert, deserve to get that shine too. And that's kind
Right.
of, why this is all even a thing.
Right, and I know that you just had one of my good friends on not too long ago, Adam Berta. He's just the man. Weirdly enough, both of us took. I kind of jokingly call it like the plunge into idiocy at the same time. But both of us seem to have found our feet pretty quickly after making that decision. And shout out Cam Elkins from formerly Weird Music Podcast. I think he actually just launched his own thing recently as well. But all three of us seem to have the same stupid ideas at the same time. And that's something that, I feel like has started to change since we've entered the scene too, is like there is a little bit of recognition for these things going on. Like, I definitely don't think any other scene has that much of a care for who does the lights, but gosh darn, we've got like celebrity lighting designers in our scene. And,
100%. Well, I mean, folks,
Um,
stay tuned, because in 2 weeks, we've got an interview with Ellis Goddard from Mockingbird Foundation. And if I had to say who is Secondhand Talent, it's Chris Kuroda.
right.
I mean, if I had to put a name to it, like to the point where, we call him CK5. He's like considered a member of the band, and if you've been to any of the shows on these recent tours, it's just reinforcing that year after year after year.
Yep.
But like, there are so many people who tour with Fish besides for Chris that make that show incredible, and
Right.
they should get that shine too.
Right. I completely agree. And that's, I'll definitely say that I've followed probably more Fish social media posts this year ever since Trey started doing like the whole "what the hell are you doing" thing. And I love those reels. I think they're great. And
Yeah, he's our only competitor.
Yeah, and shout out to their voice, to the guy that was doing voice with him too. A large reason about what got me into doing what I'm doing is hearing a rumor that Dave Matthews has somebody like me that travels with him constantly, and I've kind of had him as my inspiration for like the past 20 years. And
Wow.
I'm not exactly the biggest fan so much of Dave Matthews' music as far as jam is concerned. I know he kicks ass, and I've got a lot of family friends that love him. But it was just such an eye-opening experience to me to know that somebody like him cared enough about his voice to have somebody whose sole responsibility is to like basically listen to his performances and write notes and critique that he goes over and listens at the end of every day. And that's something that I guess in my pipe dreamy, end lofty goal kind of situation, like that's what I'd love to do. I do that a little bit unofficially with a lot of people, but at the same time, it would be really cool to do that very, very directly with a smaller number of people.
Yeah, I was going to say like on a more like one-to-one personalized basis, as opposed to just kind of an on-the-fly type.
Right. Like it's kind of funny, and I know that we're doing a little wrap up here, but whenever I teach like in the same scenario. Like when I teach people from like my local community, I'm still sitting with the same background behind me. And when I work with like professional musicians that are on tour, I'm still working with them with the same background behind me, unless I'm on tour myself. So, it's one of those situations where like, thanks to technology, I am a lot more accessible, but I feel like people especially performers out there, seem to think that you need an awful lot more to get the benefit of working with somebody like me. Like, you don't need a full hour. Like, at the very least, like,
yeah,
what we need is sequential time. Because
right.
if you're on tour,
give me 15 minutes a day over the course of a week,
straight up,
as opposed to like 1 hour now. Because absolutely, as a former teacher, I mean, it's just like, because you got to practice makes perfect,
right?
You got to be
and
able
if we're
to
trying
go
to
over
make
and
a
build,
right, and if we're trying to make a health change or something, beating yourself up or doing something intently for an hour is not going to translate to the stage immediately. So if we only have like one topic or one thing to think about, like, this is why I try to advertise myself to people that I am available while they're on tour. People do hit me up, but it's generally, I'm going to say, whenever it's a little too late and they're looking for my advice to help out in a deeper regard. But we can stop y'all from just getting there if you call me like the day you have the suspicion and let me listen to it. We can put that, into a 10-minute time period, which 10 minutes ain't nothing in the grand scheme of things.
and it's also so much at the same time.
Right. It is impossible to find a full hour. It is not impossible to find 15 minutes when you're on the road. And that's just really what it comes down to, prioritization. And if you do that for 4 straight days, then I almost guarantee you whatever we work on, we'll be able to make it to the stage by the 4th or 5th day consistently. But like, if I could do that with every band that I've ever worked with, then we'd be dealing with a whole different problem in the jam scene, other than people singing approximate in pitch and stuff like that. We would be critiquing something else, like the merch lineup,
right?
or what else they have on the table. So, it really just comes down to the perspective of the scene as a whole, and like where they really see the value coming in, because people in the jam scene, and this is me throwing everybody under the bus. I love you, all of my friends, but this is me throwing you under all of the buses. Anytime that you ask them what they do, none of them will say they're a singer. They'll be like, oh, I'm a guitarist. Oh, I'm a keyboardist. Oh, I play stand-up bass. Like, nah, dude, you sing too. Like,
right.
Put that as a label on your resume. Like, you are allowed to. And when you start to own it like that, all of a sudden the confidence starts to be there.
Yes.
All of a sudden the other things start to be there, and you start to just trust yourself more with what you need to do. And weirdly enough, it's funny, because if you sing, let's call it approximately for so long, when you sing correctly, it's gonna feel wrong.
Yeah, it's like I sing,
new.
Therefore I am, or I sing, therefore I can.
Exactly. And like, at a certain point, once you go back through it and you put it under the microscope and kind of shift it around a little bit, then you can go, oh, I was only doing like 30% of that right. Was it good enough to sell it as a jam band? Yes. But do you want to, like, I'll use Goose as a reference. I was trying to not, but Goose sounds good. Like, they got great harmonies and they dig into those harmonies. And yes, sometimes they use auto-tune, which ruffles some feathers, but I'm just going to say it is a creative paintbrush that makes sense, and it works for them whenever they use it in harmony or whenever they use it as a feature. It has its effect that still has that filling sound. But if you're not Goose, how can you become appealing? How can you stand out? Upping your vocal ability and doing something unique and cool with that is massive. I don't want to give anybody away, but I know 1 or 2 of my bands have been asking me how to do more single microphone performances, which means like more barbershop a cappella performances. And they're not a cappella group for shit. They are like,
sure,
they're playing rooms of 2,000 people, and they're just trying to do.
They want to come out and do "Hello, My Baby."
Yes. Like, and the weird part is like, that's one of those things that, like, if you do that for an audience, they won't know how much they want to see that. The moment that they see it, they're just gonna be like, what was that? Yeah. Like, and my hilarious anecdote for that is the first or second music festival I ever went to. I went with one of my members of my a cappella group, and it was Electric Forest. So you can tell that that's like it's an EDM and crazy fancy jam festival, not like a cappella group from college kind of situation.
It ain't Rothbury.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure 1 or 2 of your listeners will respond, well, Electric Forest went to die in 2013, or something like that.
In 2009.
Hashtag Rothbury, hashtag Rothbury. Yeah. But we used to sing like random a cappella things when we were like walking to the front gate, and it took us like the first day we ever did it, which was the second day of the festival. I distinctly remember like stopping. We got stopped by like a group of like 20 people, and they just made us sing a cappella. And mind you, I'm a bass and he's a tenor, so like there was a whole lot of open, non-real music going on.
Vocalic ranges missing.
Right, but it was still cool enough that it just made everybody care about it. It was weird as shit, and definitely the number one thing I was not predicting for that experience. You know, I was expecting everybody to just be like, electric music festival. But to be perfectly honest, like, I still talk to some of the people that we met from doing that. You know, it's first music festival.
Building that community. It gets back to exactly what you were talking about.
And making sure that people have fun doing what they're doing. You know, like, this is a job for all of your favorite bands. It is exhausting. When you see 45 different venues on a tour, I promise, after like the third one, they all feel the same.
It's that trait, sometime after sunset, right? They all become the same. Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, like, if there was at least that amount of self-awareness in the fan base, then like there would be so much less stress for bands, and like they would just have so much more fun out there, and everybody be having so much more of a fun time. But when the audience comes up with expectations for the band or things like that, then not only do they start to disappoint themselves, because that's what happens when you create expectations that are unwarranted by facts, but it also just makes it something that the band is constantly needing to compare themselves with. And that's not something that needs to happen. They just are supposed to be up there and play music and have fun, just like you're supposed to be there and listen to their music and have fun. So while bottom line and business and merchandise and all that stuff is part of the real conversation, like the real reason why we all do any of this is because we fucking love live music. We just want to be there and chill out and, like, you know, have somebody help us navigate some feelings every now and again with the power of their lyrics or their melody lines. Or if you're like me and my relationship with Munyon, you just have Sam Edwards slap on some crazy rainbow strobes and you're 2 feet away from Justin's face, and you turn around and you realize that you're just a puddle of water, and then at the end of it you just become really great friends with everybody involved in that scenario, and that's basically the rest of your life. But that's how community can be built in this music industry. And if you are, you know, not crazy or not like bullheaded or just at least self-aware, we're going to circle back to the whole self-awareness thing, then you will be able to find a way into it if you want to be into it. And, you know, that's kind of where, you know, my mission statement for my merch thing is I don't want it to be cut off from anybody. Like, yeah, it does kind of matter how you maybe write your resume and how we interpret it and stuff like that. Trust me, the more professional, the better. But it's just like, you know, we don't want to stand in between you and doing it in the industry. We just want to provide you the education and the knowledge that you need so that you can do it.
And so you can succeed.
Yeah, and trust me, I did not think that I knew what I was doing for the first 6 years of doing merch. So give yourself the forgiveness of time and patience, and you never know what can happen. Like, I'm working with literally the 2 bands that you listen to if you pop into my car and ask me to drive you somewhere. So like, that's kind of cool for me. I love that a lot.
I think that's an awesome lesson to finish off the interview on. Keith, I think we could probably keep talking for
probably
hours.
Brother. I feel like it's been a catch-up year.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show, and I'm sure we'll see you back on here again soon.
Absolutely, brother.
Check out all Keith's links and work and stuff in the description down there. And for Secondhand Talent, this is Steiner, and we will see y'all next Wednesday.
Catch you guys. Peace.